What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Weightlifting Scoop. It's been a little while, but I'm joined tonight by Daniel Dodd. So, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How you doing, man?
Good, good. My middle name is Daniel. Now, do you mainly go by Dan?
I do. I do. I mainly go
Okay.
by Dan. I grew up my whole high school career as just Dodd as my last name, and that same tends to go where it is I end up just going by Dodd, but
Yeah,
all
yeah.
my paperwork.
I think in high school, most people call me Coop or, something like that. So, but anyways, yeah, I wanted to get you on here. You're kind of doing a cool little project called The Weight Behind It that caught my eye, and I thought it was neat the way you were presenting coaching and your philosophy and how to build a relationship with your athletes. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, kind of dig into your background in weightlifting. You said you got started in like 2017. So, like, how did you find weightlifting?
So I was first a CrossFitter back in 2014. I went to regionals for 2 years in 2016, 2017, and then Ryan Hansen signed me up for weightlifting meet. He's like, "You're gonna like this. It's gonna be good." So I ended up just going to an event. 2017, I qualified for finals, and then I just kinda, like, dove into it as a sport, and then I ended up finding our club in, like, 2019, like, right before COVID, and just started, like, coaching, and my background's in education, so there's a lot of, like, crossover between the coaching realm and then, like, having the education background. So that's how I kinda, like, found my way in, and then as I was going actually, when I took my level 2, I was in the middle of my master's in kinesiology. And I'm like, "Oh, there's a lot that you can learn about weightlifting," and I liked how much science that you could apply into it, which was kind of a cool thing that I found to, like, dive deeper into, and that's how I kinda
Yeah, I
ended this
mean,
point.
there's the sport itself, and then the gamification of actual like competition day, which is I don't know, that can actually be pretty strategic, and I think that there's not a lot of courses behind that, and I think there's a lot of potential, like chess tactics. I think there's like similar ideas in weightlifting that can be applied, and people are figuring that stuff out now, but I think there's still a lot of knowledge gap there. That's one piece of it, but then you're talking about like kinesiology and all the science and the physiology and psychology behind it, which is all really interesting, and I feel like it's untapped. I feel like finally people were able to be professional coaches. Like you yourself, you said you were a teacher for 13 years and now you're a professional weightlifting coach. That did not exist when I first started. And so having people like you that can be a full-time weightlifting coach and coach athletes, that's huge because you actually have time to dive into this knowledge and then impart it on your athletes. Whereas in the past, people had good intentions, but they have full time jobs and families and other stuff. So they're not really doing it all day, every day.
Yeah, it's very different. I was telling you before is I just officially left my teaching job this past year, and I was running a full club when I was still teaching, and it was like I was literally running out of my lunchtime. I was like, "Hey, I got an athlete coming in. I gotta watch their session because 'cause they're competing at nationals. I gotta go just, like, see them lift and see how they're doing." And that was just it was like a partial investment from me because I had all these other things going on. So now it's like, I can sit back and, like, "You wanna come in and train? Let's get in and train." So it's been a cool shift for me in that headspace for it too.
Yeah, and I think that like education, like you said, it's interesting how things go together because being a teacher and what age were you teaching?
So I taught little kids. I taught kindergarten to 5th grade.
Okay, so you're like primed to take little ones all the way up through, so that's pretty neat. Yeah, that's I think until I had kids, I had very little experience with younger kids, and I was worried because before I had kids, when I would see my friends' kids, I'd be like, "Oh, hey little guy, hey little girl," like I would have no idea how to interact with them because I was the youngest. Like I have an older sister, and and I don't really have, like, younger cousins or anything, but and then I would see all my friends, and they were really good at interacting with kids, and then when I had my own kids, it came natural, and now I know how to interact with other people's kids without it being as awkward, and so I understand, and I'm so thankful that it came natural because, it wouldn't be any fun if you're just, like, awkward with your own kids,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, having that experience around kids goes a long way and, like, being able to start a youth program, and I think that'll pay dividends. It's really cool how, like, the different avenues play together.
Yeah, so a lot of like the weight behind it stuff started because of the education background. Is I saw there was like so much crossover that wasn't necessarily like being like taught or like the experience of, because it's very different. Like, for us, like someone comes in, they do a one on one. It's a very different experience than running like a 20-person class. And I felt like that was something that was like hard to sometimes instruct people through, especially in some of like the smaller settings. And part of the weight behind it is to start giving these things of like, this is how we define a relationship with somebody. This is how we build this foundation to then start creating a structure to like show them where we're going. And it doesn't need to be done on the first day, but we can kind of create these cultures in our atmospheres to then be able to really grow and develop.
Yeah, so are these things that you try to do with each of your individual athletes and then try to kind of get them to integrate with the entire group in training in a certain way? So you're building like this holistic culture where you're meeting with them one on one and kind of like taking them through this, like, I wouldn't call it a curriculum, but is that sort of your vision is to
Yeah.
have
And even
everyone
now,
come in and be go ahead.
yeah. So like even now, like, so I actually work more with our coaching staff. So I have 6 coaches that coach under me. And I actually spend more time like working with the coaches of like, this is how we develop them as a group because we're primarily online. So like most of our company is like online coaching, which is a very weird way to make a community. And I have coaches that are in different locations. So it's like we foster these separate communities and I work with the coaches of like, this is how we develop the relationship. This is how we then foster that relationship as a culture. And then this is how we develop further to be like, there's I mean, I know you train in your house sometimes too, and like those are sometimes some either great sessions or really difficult sessions. And trying to foster the community to be like, hey, like I saw that you completed your work today, or I saw that you did something today. And we have sections of like there's a supportive nature that comes along with it. Of like you post in our teams or our groups, and it's like everyone's there and kind of supporting around you. And I work with my coaches of like, this needs to be the priority of that because they're athletes' weightlifting journeys, in our headspace is like, it's not about me, right? It's not about what our coaches do. It's like we're part of what the athlete's accomplishing. So it's like for us, is like very much so like athletes should be in the forefront of everything that we do. And we try to make a culture that like, for lack of better words, like coaches are in the back seat and we want to like help support it. And then we want that foundation of that culture around them to like help push that next step further.
Yeah, like elevate the athlete and give them that platform to reach their goals and empower them, you know? Um, yeah, I like that. I had no idea that you had 6 coaches under you, so you've really developed your company and, so you guys, must have a pretty good reach. How many athletes are you guys working with?
So we're with our youth teams. We're just under 100. Each coach carries about 15 to 20 athletes on them. Some coaches are a little bit newer, so they'll do a little more like just in person work. And then I have uh, 3 other main coaches that take majority of our online work.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and you have a lot of youth athletes, you said? I know you said it's like a split where you have a lot of masters athletes as well, but what's kinda like the demographic breakdown? Is it mostly like younger kids and masters, or is there I
Yeah,
mean, obviously,
we have
there's gonna
very
be a lot
few.
of variety.
Yeah, we actually have very few senior athletes. They're probably our
Mhm.
smallest margin is like so we also run a program with the Boys and Girls Club locally to us. So we have a lot of kids that we see. It's actually what I had today is like we have kids that come in that train at the Boys and Girls Club with us. So it's a nonprofit event for them. They can just come in, they can train, they can learn weightlifting. And then we have a team of about another 12 kids that train just out of our facilities. And that's youth and juniors, really.
Yeah, no, what do you think are the gaps? So I know you said, you coach the level ones and you have a lot of people to say, "Hey, where do I go from here?" How do you think like, what's your vision of bridging the gap and helping them get to the next level? Because obviously, like, understanding weightlifting is one part of it, and the level 1 is gonna give you a very basic amount of that. Level 2 gives you a little more, but really the only way that you get better at the sport is reading and applying that knowledge. Just because you know something and if you haven't applied it, like, sometimes it's hard. There's a gap there, like I understand a concept, but, like, it's not really working on my athletes like I thought it was going to, so there's some experimentation, but also this personal side of coaching, so
Yeah. So the biggest gap that I kind of found was which is where I kinda talk more about, like, my education background, was I felt when I was running the level 1 courses and I enjoyed the level 1 courses, I think there's a lot of information that we could really cram into 2 days of those, class sessions. But I think the hard thing is then, how do you then develop the athlete, right? We talk about the general idea of, like, bringing athletes in. We go over the and general guideline of coaching, error corrections, and stuff like that, which is great. But then there's a large piece of this that, like, needs to be a relationship, right? Like, I now have when I work with Sean, right, like, one of my big things is, like, I had a tough time finding a coach because I had a tough time believing that someone was gonna support me the same way, and, like, not always looking that they were gonna get something out of it. And once I kind of started to find that relationship, it's like, "Oh, I now believe that I think my relationship with Sean is probably more important than maybe what he gives me programming wise, right? Because if he tells me that I'm going to do something on a barbell and he believes I'm going to do it, I have full faith in him and I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to figure it out. And I found
Yeah,
that,
and
like, developing that was hard.
for people out there, like, you're saying Sean's name, but that is Sean Rigsby. So just for people out there, like, that's who he's talking about. Sean Rigsby is his coach. And so you started working with him. You said that you were self-coach for about 5 or 6 years, and then you started working with him. So you developed a relationship with him, and he kind of built trust in you. And how did that relationship and trust like help you believe in yourself more?
So, I mean, so Sean coached me early on. He took me to an event, and then this was before he was actually my coach. And then he just kept, like, showing up and he was, like, in my corner. Like, he'd, like, come check on the platform as I'm warming up at an event. How you doing? Checking in. How you feeling? How's that training going? And it felt to me that nothing was ever expected in return from me. And I think that's how that, like, relationship kinda started. And I'm like, "Oh, he actually just cares how I'm doing as an athlete or how things are going." And now I'm even at a point with Sean of, like, Sean and I have calls every other week, and it's more of, like, a check-in of, like, you know, we're gonna talk about this more, but, like, now you're a master's athlete, like, how's your recovery? It's like when I was, 24 years old, it's like, okay, well, I'm not drinking and I went to bed and I ate all my food. And, like, now that's not my life anymore. It's like, now it's like, how many times did my kids get up? What time was I able to sleep? What time did my first kid wake up? And it's more of like he found the understanding of that and was willing to work with me through it. And now it's through that progression of, like, I think I started with Sean when I think it was right after my daughter was born, so my second child. And he was like, "No, I'll figure it out."
Yeah, that's really important. And I think there's a healthy balance when with a coach where it's like, you gotta push the athlete, but you also have to make sure that weightlifting continues to fit into their life, right? And so, of course, when you have two kids and you just have your second child, like you want to be present for your family. So, you can't be pressured to do things that are getting in the middle of your family life, right? And so it's important that the coach is like, okay, I understand that his family life is really important. Let's fit weightlifting around it and get the most that we can while supporting that. And so it seems like that's something that he was able to accomplish, which really made you feel like, okay, this coach cares about my family life. We're going to figure it out and fit weightlifting around it and optimize what I can do with the time that I have.
Yeah, 100%. Because even stuff was like, I think one of my first calls with him, he was like, "When's the last time you went out on a date with your wife?" And I'm like, "I don't know, 4 months ago when I, like, picked my head up." And he's like, "All right, well, maybe don't train tomorrow and, like, just go out. Like, go get dinner with your wife." I'm like, "Okay, well, that's not training, but if you think that's important." And then I think that's when those things started dawning on me as, like, "No, I mean, maybe this is more important than I realized it was."
Yeah, it's so funny because you go out, you kinda relieve some, tension and have a great time, and then the wife is more supportive of your weightlifting the next day because she had a good time as well, you know? Whereas
Yeah,
if you're constantly choosing weightlifting and then she's like, "He's always going and training weightlifting, and he's not even taking me," you know? So it is important, and it's funny that he said that because, yeah, I mean, that stuff can definitely get overlooked when you have kids and you're in the trenches and you're just tired and you're like, "I have all this stuff on my to-do list." And your wife feels the same way. I know, my wife always feels like she has to do stuff that even when it really to me isn't important, she feels like it, so it is. And so, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and there's definitely something like, I'm sure your wife feels the same way. Is like there's something about being the wife of someone that's like, I don't know, willing to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and squat 500 pounds, right? Like I
Yeah.
know that's not easy on you. Like I know you're like, why are you getting up right now? Just stay in bed. It's like, well, no, I got to go train. And like my wife has always been so supportive of it because she's done all of the, when you're picking up and going away somewhere for 5 6 days, and my wife's like, yeah, I got it. Go go compete or go coach, whatever it is now. Like that for me, like this doesn't happen without that like home foundation. Cause if I was stressed about that, I can't get on a plane.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's not an easy thing, right? But yeah, having that support and understanding that hey, weightlifting is important for you, so your wife's supportive, your coach is supported. Just feeling like people around you actually care about your result helps you train and get better. Because when other people are invested, you also, when you're tired, wanna prove them right, if they believe in you or they're sacrificing, like, yeah, I'm gonna go to nationals and my wife's gonna be here with the kids for, like, 5 or 6 days as well, and then, that's hard work.
Yeah.
So, I wanna do well so that it's, like, not in vain that she did all that so that I could go pursue this, right? And so, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I like all like the investment part too of like my first medal I ever won at I won the Arnold. It was my first event that I won a medal at. And I came home and my wife looked at me and she goes, yes, we won a medal. And I'm like, we won a medal? And she's like, yeah, I was home. I cooked. I'm like, yeah, you're right. We won a medal.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's not possible if you were at home with the kids alone and having to do all that stuff. There's no time to train because there's like a hierarchy of what you have to do, and so all this other stuff has to be taken care of. And if she's able to take that off your plate here and there, and or all the time certain things, then that allows you to have that time. No, that's cool. And so is your strategy to kind of take people and say, hey, you have these things that are important to you. Let's figure out how important weightlifting is to you and fit that into your schedule so you can get the most out of weightlifting with what you're willing to put in.
Yeah, we got to find a way. It can't, square peg round hole. That's just not going to work. So, I've had athletes that start with us and like, I want to go to nationals, right? And it's like, okay, well, we got to put on whatever 50 kilos on your total. It's like, do you realize the sacrifice that you're going to have to make for the next 2 3 years for that process? And it's like, what are you willing to sacrifice in that time span? And is your life set up is your life equipped for that? And the answer is no, like that's okay. But then we got to re-rationalize our goals.
Yeah, that's one of the things that me and my coach also talk about with athletes is like when people come and they say, "Hey, I have a bigger goal." It's like, "Okay, are you willing to alter your life in a way that's gonna support that goal? Because here's what that takes. Here's where you're at now, and it's fine if you wanna stay here. I wanna support you and continue to have you in the sport, but if you wanna go to this level, it requires just a little more, you're gonna have to change a few things and prioritize weightlifting higher. So if you're willing to do that and you're willing to put other things aside, then we can get there. But if you're not, maybe it's possible, but just trying to give you realistic expectations of how you're gonna have to prioritize this to really get where you're telling me you wanna go. And then, if they're not able to show that action, then you kinda have to have another talk and be like, "Hey, like, here's how you're structuring your life, which is gonna give you this result, which is fine. I'm supportive if that's where you want to be. But if you wanna be where you told me 6 months ago you wanna be, we gotta continue to start doing these other things as well." So yeah, it's a constant like trying to figure out with athletes like where do you want weightlifting to fit in and how much time and commitment are you willing and able to do?
Yeah, that balance is hard. And I think when you build that like foundational structure with an athlete is where you can start to like I know when I was a young coach, like those conversations were hard, right? Me going back to an athlete and be like, hey, you're not and the ways to say it nicely of like, hey, you're not doing what you said you're gonna do. And now this is where we are. And I think it took a lot of time to like realize that I need a foundational relationship with them first so that they know that I'm not coming at them as like, I'm mad at you or you're doing something wrong. It's more of like, hey, like, let's figure out what this goal needs to look like and how can we make you successful towards this. And I think that was a hard thing for me to learn early in coaching. I think that part's kind of the gap that I'm trying to work with the weight behind it of like, this is how we develop the relationship so we can have those conversations that my athlete trusts me to work towards their goal with them and not just tell them this is what you have to do because I said so.
Yeah, and I think when people like yeah, you wanna develop a relationship where they're comfortable with you, so and it's like this with parenting too, right? If you're like uber strict with your athletes and you're constantly like a fire breather, then they don't want to tell you when something's going wrong, or like your athlete doesn't want to tell you that they skip training or they can't train. So if you're like, hey, every time they tell you that they have to skip a training session for something, you're like, well, that's unacceptable. Like, you're not going to reach your goals if you don't do this. And you're kind of like reprimanding them. They're gonna stop telling you when things change or when they have a slight tweak, "Should I train or should I not?" If you're always pushing them, they're either gonna, like, hide it and not train at all because you're not altering their workout, or they're just gonna train through it because you're continuously, like, pushing them, and that may not be the right thing either. So I agree, you have to build a relationship so that they're comfortable coming to you in the same way that you would want to build a relationship with your kids so they would come and tell you their problems so you can actually talk through them and troubleshoot instead of just have them do it on their own and maybe or maybe not make the right choice, right?
Yeah, and you just sit back in the dark and like, oh, I wonder what's going on.
So you started weightlifting and, you said, like, your first national meet was the end of 2017. And um, you have 2 kids now. So obviously you had kids along the way. So 2 things that I would like to talk to you about, like, from a training perspective is, like, how did your training change when you had kids? And, obviously that's a life-changing thing. I've been through it. I'm a couple years behind you. And also the master's athlete, right? It is true, age is a factor, but, like, does your body feel different and how's your training changed? So, let's kinda start out with the first thing, you got a six-year-old, so we're sitting there in 2020, and you guys have your first, and you've been training for 3 or 4 years, and kinda, like, what level were you at in 2020 prior to you guys having your first?
So I actually won the Arnold 3 weeks before COVID. So right before like the world shut down and my son was 4 months old. And, that was kind of like, I think so much change in that moment of my son being born with like the world change, my son being born. I actually turned my garage into a gym for people to train in. So like I had people that were like just training out of my house when they could. I developed like a whole timesheet. It was crazy. And I was competing. So I said like I won gold at the Arnold. I think I had like a 305 total. And that was like my first like, oh, maybe I can be successful in this kind of moment.
Mhm.
And at that point, I think I was training because I was still coaching myself, and I was in the tension of like more work is better work, which I've learned is not the case anymore, especially getting older. So I was doing like anywhere from like 6 to 8 sessions a week, doing doubles, tons of squatting. And then once my son was born, it definitely played like a little bit of a twist of like, okay, what can I get in? So that changed to like some weeks it was 4 sessions. Some weeks maybe I got 6 in, and, like, a session could be, like, 40 minutes and I squatted, and that would be my session because I could run down to my basement and train. So that was, like, a big change, and then kinda found some ways to level out. I guess once he was, like, 6 months old or so, and, like, I got into, like, a routine again of, like, "Okay, this is on 5 days a week or 6 days a week," and that kinda got back into, like, a r steady stream of, like, training again.
Yeah, so it seems like you found that the first 6 months of having your first is just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
It was for us. I mean, I think, parenting is always difficult, but the first 6 months for both of my kids, like, that's just they're not sleep trained at all. They have their feeding frenzies. It's one of the most rewarding times, but it's also, like, you're gonna have, like, no routine. You should have no expectations about what tomorrow brings, because if you're like, "Tomorrow's a heavy session, everything has to go right," that your kid's gonna wake you up that night, right? So, like, you can't ever plan for, like, the perfect schedule, which if you're a little neurotic, like, as a weightlifter, you can want to do that. That can be, like, your natural state, but you just have to go with the flow. You have to be like, "Hey, There's no expectations and just kinda get through it, and then so once you got to 6 months, you were able to get into more of a routine. So it was just like, get in what I can, and then once you got into a routine, alright, we're stacking days again and we're planning a little more. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it was definitely gotten better to a point of like, I know I know I can plan when days could be good.
Mhm. Yeah. So a little I mean, still auto-regulating, but not so much in the fact where like, yeah, it's hard to plan the first 6 months. And one thing too that I've always done well with, which I think has helped me stay in the sport, which it seems like you have done a great job of, is not being all in or all out, right? So I think some people, they got to a point and like maybe they were residents of OTC or training in that way, like you're saying, like training like 6 to 8 times a week. And then when they can no longer do that and their life doesn't allow them to train that often, they say, "Well, I can't train 8 times a week. That's what I have to do to be good. So why even try anymore?" And they just disappear.
Yeah, I know like that's I'm that way as well normally. And I think it took a lot of work of like getting past. I think there was a period of time like probably a month, the first month or two, it was like I if I didn't train, I was okay. And it was like more of like I didn't really want to get into the gym because I couldn't do anything and I couldn't do it the right way in my head. And then I think after the first 2 months, I'm like, okay, wait, like I gotta still train because I do love the sport and I love what I'm doing. And me trying to say that I have to get this amount of sessions in is becoming detrimental to what's happening.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think somebody who's done a good job with that is like Phil Sabatini over the years. He always I've heard him say multiple times, if you can get 2 training sessions a week, then do 2. You don't have to be like, I'm only gonna be able to do 2 training sessions for the next 6 weeks, so I should just quit. It's like, no, get your 2, kinda like maintain what you can, and then when your life changes again and it opens back up, then build up slowly back to 6 training sessions a week if that's what you feel like is optimal for you. But don't just like stop training altogether and then try to train 6 sessions a week like 6 months later after you've totally detrained and then get injured immediately.
But yeah, right back.
So there's definitely an art to just going with the flow and being like, "Okay, like, I'm getting my master's degree, you got your master's degree. Okay, we just had our first kid. Okay, we just had our second kid," and just saying, "What can I get?" And that is super difficult. It is difficult to go from being this person that has this very structured weightlifting life to adding things to it and not being able to do that, and it's definitely a learned thing. So I agree, I struggle with that too, but I feel like a lot of people would have just quit. And so just learning that skill allows you to continue to be in it longer.
Yeah, I was lucky. My head coach and like a really good friend of mine, Taylor, you during this time, she's like, "Hey, look, you get to train." And I had to like change that like headspace of it of like, I gotta and I was training at my house. I was like, I have to go down and I gotta train. She's like, "No, no, no. You get to go downstairs and train today. Isn't that great?" I'm like, "Yes, that's great. That's the right way to say it. I get to go do this because I'm lucky to get to go and train, that I have whatever, 40 minutes to go and squat because I like doing it." So
Mhm.
that headspace change was important for me too.
Yeah, and having the correct lens and then doing that squat session, it definitely makes it easier when you kinda, like, go and de-stress and spend that 40 minutes, and then your mindset changes a little bit. When you come back, you can be a better version of yourself, for the kids. So, you have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, so for, like, the first 3 years, you're probably able to build somewhat of a routine, somewhat steady. Obviously, things probably came up here and there, but once you guys had your 2nd kid, like, what was your experience there?
It's funny, my wife and I were always like, the second one was easier because we just like, I don't know, we felt like we knew what was coming. We weren't blindsided to be like, okay, we're not gonna sleep these nights, but we're gonna take turns and we're gonna figure this out because we knew a little more about what was coming. So that was it. When my daughter was born, there was definitely an easier path because my son was also very helpful and like loved being a big brother. So we were lucky about that of like he wanted that role and wanted to be helpful. But it's the same thing of like, these are my expectations based on sleep, and I'm gonna, take what I can get. And I think during that time of training too, I was like, I sleep when I sleep. I'm gonna train when I can train, and that's gonna be great. And I'm gonna just be happy with whatever I'm getting in, which was, a hard headspace and I still have the battle with it too of like missing a training session. I'm like, you know, you're gonna get worse, and I'm like, no, that's not true. Like, missing a session is not gonna destroy and derail 8 months of training.
Yeah, for sure. That's easy to get in the mindset of, but yeah, it seems like your expectations were different, and so you were able to go with the flow a little easier because you had already experienced that. I would say, from my experience, so I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. They're a little closer in proximity and age. So, like, my daughter wasn't quite ready. She's just now that older sister, whereas at first they were too close in proximity for her to do much. She might want to do stuff, but it would be like almost like more frustrating as a parent because, like, you really shouldn't be doing that type thing. I would say when we had her, it didn't change our lives too much. I mean, obviously, the beginning phase is really tough, but once we got past that initial phase, because COVID had happened, we weren't going out as much anymore already prior to having kids, and so we already had, like, some structure around us, and the first one was okay because when one of us was watching the kids alone, if my daughter was napping, okay, you kinda have some free time there, right? But when we had 2, I think that the challenge that we ran into wasn't the expectations, like, our expectations were reasonable, but it was a lot harder because when one person goes out of town or one person goes out of the house, even if it's just to go shopping or to the gym or whatever, you're outnumbered and they're never napping at the same time. So that was the struggle that made it more difficult from our perspective.
Yeah, so I was also like I'm also skewed view in this because when my daughter was born, I was teaching full time. I was training, continuing to try to train at a high level, and I was already running a full-time business. So my wife took the brunt of my both my kids being, young because I would leave my house about 5 o'clock in the morning and I would get back home at like 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. And that's when I talk about like, no, no, she was like a support system that allowed any of this to happen of like me as an athlete or me in the business.
Yeah, I mean, if she wasn't willing to do that, then you wouldn't be a full-time weightlifting coach now because you wouldn't have had that time to do the side gig, right? It would have just been a side gig and it wouldn't have grown to the point that it did where it allowed you to take that leap. So, and I yeah, totally agree. Like, my wife was awesome and continues to be with the kids, and so, yeah, I mean, you can't keep training at a high level unless you're getting some help because if I have, like, no desire to be a single parent, right? It's so difficult. It would
Yeah, I
be
can't
just so
imagine.
much, and I always had respect for, like, single parents, but man, after having kids, it really makes you realize, like, how difficult it can be financially and just time-wise as a single parent. Because, I mean, just daycare cost alone isn't just insanity, right? And so it's just like you don't realize these things until you experience them, and then you're like, "Wow, I always, like, respected this person, but, like, not at the same level I do now," right?
It's a whole different meaning when someone's like, a stay-at-home mom, and I'm like, no, 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 that's a full-time job. I'm like, no way.
But, yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. So and, yeah, so along the way, you had 2 kids, and so your expectations were a little better the second time, and so you were able to roll with the punches a little more, and then, of course, now, this year, you became a master's athlete, which people create this arbitrary number. It's 35 in weightlifting, 40 in powerlifting. Obviously, age is a factor, and so masters weightlifting makes sense. But it's not like you magically turned 35 and you were 34 yesterday, and now all of a sudden I'm just way worse, right? Like there might be a slow decay in your ability and power output and stuff, but it's not like you fall off a cliff. So what has been your experience as a masters athlete? Obviously, you've had amazing competitions in December and, this year are you 36 this year? Turning 36?
Yeah, I'm turning 36 this year.
Okay, so you competed at the Masters Worlds in December as a masters athlete, and then, okay, so yeah, how has that changed, like, from when you were 24, and what role do you think age is playing versus, like, "Hey, I'm a business owner, we got 2 kids, I do other things, I have other hobbies." Let's talk through that.
So I think the biggest thing was like my training is still a priority, but I think the amount of training started to play a huge factor. And I think that's something that Sean and I have worked a lot on is like how many days are realistic. My recovery is slower already. So like I train now 4 days a week we probably can have a good heavy session maybe every 10 days. Where, like, when I was 24, I was like, "I don't know. It's Wednesday, let's try." And that's just not the case anymore. It's the, like, we gotta be, like, really calculated of, like, if we take this volume back, I could have a good day here. Um, and that's been the biggest change, but, like, I had a platform PR at Masters Nationals, which was cool for the snatch. So, like, still being able to, like, increase my numbers is really cool to still be part of. I think it's just that I have to be a lot more diligent in, like, my recovery stuff and, you know, and getting sleep when I can get sleep and, like, taking care of those things and realizing, like, you know, early on, if you're like, "Hey, I feel terrible, my knee hurts, my back hurts," in your 20s, it's like, "Okay, well, squat anyway, you'll figure it out." And now it's like, "Okay, let's make sure this is not gonna be a thing," because I've had back injuries a number of times now that have sidelined me for 2 months at a time, and it's like, I can't afford that now, still trying to compete as a national athlete. So that's what I think the biggest changes with me has been is, like, cutting back my amount of training and then just being a lot more aware of how I'm training and the purpose of what I'm doing.
Yeah, I agree. My appetite for pain is much less now. Like, you got to train through pain as a weightlifter, and there's a certain amount of it that's acceptable, and like you kind of learn what is acceptable and like not dangerous pain. And when you work with a PT, you got to make sure that certain things are not like more, if you train through it, it's not gonna be a bigger issue. Man, I definitely do not enjoy having lingering pain for like 2, 3 months anymore, and, for the most part, I don't have a lot of that anymore, knock on wood, I'll probably tweak something tomorrow,
Yeah.
but that is the worst, man. I used to just, kind of, I would have this mindset that, like, I'm a soldier and it's, like, part of this journey to train through this pain and, like, I would know what was good pain and bad pain, but I would kinda, like, wear it as a badge of honor that, like, I'm training through pain and, like, I have a high tolerance for pain and stuff. It doesn't have to be that way, um, but yeah, that's one thing that's definitely changed as I've gotten older, which I think is a positive because you really shouldn't be training through pain, right? I mean, there's a certain amount of it that you have to, um, but agreed. I think just being smart. One thing that I've realized is that since I've had kids is that like time flies, like, because your kids are just growing up so fast. And so like a year flies by like crazy as you get older. So, used to it'd be like, oh, yeah, I got like 3 months for this to train for this meet. And now I'm like, that is like nothing.
I'm like, "Am I deloading already? It's 3 months."
Yeah. I think like my perception of time is different and like the amount of time that it takes to prepare for something that you really want to do. But I genuinely don't really feel that much different in training. My results may not always be the same because like life responsibility is so much higher. But when I'm able to put the time in, like I still feel like I'm able to like recover from it. Like there might be small differences. Like I can't go heavy as often, but I can probably still train with the same frequency if I just like I'm a little smarter with my dosage and like the intensity. But, yeah, I really don't feel like a huge difference yet, and I've been training since I was, like, 16, so about 22 years now. So, there's obviously a point at which that changes, but I think that point is older than people thought before, and so I like seeing people like yourself. Kane's been in the game for a long time. You got people like Chris Douglas, Jared Kuhn, David Ethier, like, I don't know, like, masters athletes in their 40s. And there's even guys, I forget his name, I wish I could remember, but there was a guy that was, like, 90 years old, and he, like, clean and jerked, like, 60 kilos. I was like, "Wow, that is incredible,"
Yeah.
right? And that's the thing, like, people think that weightlifting's all about, like, elite performance, and that's certainly part of it, and, like, watching the Olympics and seeing Olivia Reeves and the Hampton Morris medal, your hometown heroes, that's so freaking cool, right? And, like, that's the dream, like, we all kind of wanted to do that, and we want to do that, right? But everybody's not going to. But at the end of the day, like, if you do something like that and then you, like, stop training and you can't get out of your chair when you're 70, like, it doesn't matter. Like, weightlifting is something that can enhance your life when you're older if you do it in a smart way, and I would love to be that guy that's 90, clean jerking
Yeah.
60 kilos and still being able to do it, right? I mean, hell, I would love to just be alive at 90, so I think that that's so cool, and weightlifting's so much more than just, like, optimizing your total for the next competition.
Yeah, there's a longevity piece to it. I'm really lucky. I had an athlete walked in. He was in the 1985 Olympic trials, and George Fujora, and he's 70, and he's still in there like 3 days a week, and he's in training with me. And just hearing him kind of like talk about like training is like one of the coolest things that I get to be around. Right, like, he's there, he shows up, he loves to just be in the training atmosphere of the day, and we get to, like, just talk it out, right? Like, talk out, like, what does training look like? How do you feel during your sessions? And, it's inspiring to train next to him and be like, "Man, I hope when I'm 70 that I'm, you know, sitting here with a couple of kids and watching a training session and just, like, talking about, I don't know, European championships."
Yeah, agreed. I think that that masters weightlifting is really cool, and obviously, like, I mean, part of it is still high performance and optimizing your total. And I think it would be really cool to hit a big total at like 50 years old. But I also think equally, I wouldn't want that to be at the expense of being able to lift when I'm 70, right? And so there becomes a point of trying to balance, you know, doing the best I can ever or doing the best that I can now versus like making sure that I can continue to do this later on, which is a tough balance. And that a lot of that has to do with listening to your body and, your appetite for pain and willingness to push through. Because sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
So your body's obviously telling you something.
Yeah. I don't know how you feel, but I'm like, I definitely get the thought sometimes, like, I wonder how many more times I can clean 180 kilos. Like, I wonder if, like, is there a number of times I can do that in my life until I'm like, "God, this hurts?"
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think my weight classes change so often that number is drastically different here and there, but yeah, I hadn't clean jerked like 180 in like 3 years because I'd cut to 73 and then we had our second kid and I got my was working on my masters and got fat and found myself at like 90 kilos and I'm like, "Oh god." But, I was able to get my clean jerk back up, so that was cool. But yeah, it took me a while, and so it was really rewarding because like when you do something you haven't done in a while, it feels better. Like there was one time where I didn't PR for several years when we were at Muscle Driver. I probably didn't PR for like 3 or 4 years or something. Once I finally hit a snatch PR, oh my god, it's like you get chills. You're just like, "Yes." But when you're PRing all the time, it's normal and like you're almost like mad when you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, when new people come in, they're just starting to hit all their PRs, and they miss one, and I'm like, "Do you realize I haven't hit a PR in this many years?" It's like, this is you were spoiled.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, even like Olivia continuing to hitting PRs, which is amazing. Like you're already like world champ, Olympic champ, and you're hitting PRs like it's just a normal thing. That was never my experience, right? I was never at that level, but I would have like times where I wouldn't PR for like a year, and then all of a sudden I would just have like a string of PRs. So my training was always like that. Like I never had like, okay, this month I hit a 1 kilo PR this month. It'd be like nothing, 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 a lot, stuck for 3 years, nothing, a lot, you know, and I would always have like big dips. A lot of that really, if I trace it back and be like, what was going on in my life and how much was I able to prioritize weightlifting, that probably plays a bigger role than like just happenstance. But that was definitely my experience in weightlifting. It was like when the
Yeah,
PRs came, they came quick, but I would stagnate for a long time.
I always got stuck at, like, the markers, right? Like, when you had that plate the big plate change, I was always like, "This
Mm.
is important," and then I would sit behind that thing for a year, and, like, I even got to a point where, like, I couldn't hit 182 kilos. I could do all the other numbers around it, but, something about 182, I'm like, "This is ridiculous." I think I cleaned 185 and I jerked 185, but I couldn't clean 182 if I had to jerk it, and it was, like, this, like, mindset thing of, like, just rocked me, and I got stuck there for, like, over a year. I was just stuck on that number.
Yeah, you gotta change between the pound plates and the the kilo plates. I joined a recently, so I was training in my garage for a long time, and I try to go to a couple different gyms around here. There's some pretty cool gyms, but they're like 30 to 40 minutes away, which is like just too far to train like daily. And so like 90% of my sessions are alone in the garage where I really don't have like accessory equipment. I just basically have a squat rack, I have a bench, and so I can hit like powerlifting, weightlifting. That's pretty much it, and then can get a little creative with the barbell and complexes, but like for the most part, it's like pretty specific training when I'm in there. And so we're able to find this gym with childcare, which is really amazing what a commercial gym, when they have a lot of members, how little they can charge and the benefits you can get if you actually use them. But like their business model is like, we hope you don't come in and it just charges your credit card every month. It's just a different animal than like me or you. Like we're hoping that the athletes like train every day and like get better, and like they want us to go to nationals and coach them and whatnot. So it's just like a totally different situation. But it's been cool. It's on pound plates, so like, when my warm-ups are supposed to be 100, it's like 102. It's like a little bit of overload that you're getting by chance. So yeah, it's funny. Can make a difference. I think the equipment I train on doesn't feel like those high temp plates. It's like they're like the urethane plates,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so they almost feel heavier. But
Yeah, like the metal plates, they're so heavy. It's like the same
yeah, yeah.
metal plates are heavier.
But so anyways, like, what are your goals, man? I mean, you're a master's athlete now. You're doing awesome. You're hitting lifetime PRs. How often are you training now, and what are your goals in your next few meets going to be?
So I'm training about 4 days a week right now. Sometimes we even drop it in the fifth day if like I know one of my days is gonna need to be short. I'll move a squat day and I'll kind of just like break a day in half. So that's about what we're training every week. Next thing coming up is senior nationals in Colorado. So I'm excited for that. I'd like the podium. I'd like the podium at senior nationals as a master's athlete. At masters nationals, I only took one of the two American records. I'd like to take all three of them. And then, I would love some big numbers on the bar, but we gotta see. And like this 94 class is a cutthroat class. Like it's a deep class. There's a lot of talent in it. There's a lot of guys in it that are like putting up big numbers, and you know it's nice that like we all get along, and I want to see them successful. But at the same time, it's like I know we all want to win, so it's gonna be fun. Colorado's gonna be a good time. It's a good session. Hopefully, we're not at 8 p.m. again, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah, I lifted at, so you're on the East Coast too, and so in Salt Lake, I lifted at 8 PM, which was 10 PM. I think it was only a 2-hour difference, so it was 10 PM this time, and then by the time we got done, it was, like, midnight. I'm like, "I'm not built for this anymore." Like, I go to bed at, like, 10, I might be awake at midnight, but, like, I'm not lifting weights.
No, no, I
But
can't do that.
I'm also not a morning person. Like when you were saying like wake up at 5, like I am not that guy. Like I'm
Uh,
not a big 5 AM person. So I train best around lunchtime or 5 PM. And I mean, I'll train in the morning if I have to, but it's just going to be rough. I'm going to be achy. Like the weights are going to be way depressed. So like if I'm training, I can't really like focus on the weight. I'll have to be like, I want to stress myself a certain amount, and then the weight's going to be way lower. So, in order for me to get like a proper dosage and intensity, like usually I have to train later, but that's all in what you get used to, I think. I just haven't ever trained in the morning like for an extended period of time to probably get used to it.
yeah,
So,
I was a personal trainer in college, and like since I was like 19 years old, my morning started at 4:30, and that's just what I kind of got
wow. Yeah.
acclimated to. It was like, oh no, this is when we get up. This is when we start our doing our things. Even the point of like when my kids were born, the rule was like, if it's after 4 o'clock, you can just wake me up because I'll just be up from then on. But if it's at 2:30 and you wake me up, I'm gonna be up from 2:30 for the rest of the day because I'm not gonna go back to bed because I'm just gonna
Right.
start
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
day. So that was like my wife and I were like, I will take anything before 2:30. After 2:30, you can't wake me up. Give me a little
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
hours.
That's fair because 4:30 is pretty early.
Yeah, it hurt.
Yeah. No, that's cool. So you got senior nationals and then anything after that, or you just want to see how you do there and then go from that point on?
I'd like to see how I do from there. I think our team's gonna go to Texas, so I probably won't end up competing in Texas.
Mhm.
And then, finals. But that's all we kinda got on the calendar right now is, like, see how we kinda go from there. It'd be interesting to see if I could do I haven't done my states in our years, a long time. I think I've done 1, so it'd be cool to do that because you know, do some local stuff now and then, but that's really it.
Yeah, I had, like, a little knee issue in 2023, and then I basically continued to train, but, like, didn't wanna put pressure on myself to compete, so I didn't feel like I had to train through pain that I shouldn't, and, I've started competing at more local meets and, like, the Masters National stuff, like, things that I don't feel like I have to, like, go balls to the wall in training. It's been a lot of fun because there's, like, so much less pressure, you just, like, if you go to a local meet, like, I don't know, I used to like just, and this is all in my head because truthfully, like as you get older, you realize that like nobody really gives a shit about what you do, But you're like, oh, I can't like go to a local meet and not like be the person that I was at nationals or something, right? Because people are expecting that, but like they don't really care. Like they just want to hang out with you and like see you lift, but like they're really focused on what they're doing. They're not really like worried about what you're doing. And if they talk about it, that's more in their own head than like something that's wrong with you. So, but yeah, I used to be like, I'm not gonna go to the local meet because I don't want to be in the heavier weight class and lift less weight and stuff. But as I started to take that pressure off, it's just fun to go to local meets and just train through. And actually see more people like Hampton Morris goes to like a lot of local meets, and Olivia and Hamp go to like every national meet. And obviously they're good enough where there's, they go to nationals and there's not a lot of pressure, and that's crazy, but uh, they can kind of do that without feeling the pressure. But I think a lot of it too is just they've just kind of been brought up that way. So I
Yeah, I mean,
think there's a lot to be said.
Olivia went to Pan Ams and there wasn't any pressure. She won on her
Yeah.
openers.
Yeah, and yeah, when you're able to say, "Hey, I'm upset about the meet because I didn't hit world records," that's and there's a way you could look at it and say, "Hey, she only made the lifts, but like she cut down to 69, was taking world record attempts. That's incredible." And so, really, from everyone else except for herself, it's a hell of a meet. She smoked the competition.
It's amazing. Yeah.
But to her, she probably feels a little bit of that, even, I wouldn't say embarrassed is the right word, but she feels like, "I should have done more, I only made, 115 or whatever," where when you put it in perspective, you're like, "That's badass," and it's hard to
Yeah.
see when it's yourself. It's hard to see that. I mean, even for people like us, if we go to a local meet, and not every local meet's like this, some of the competition now is crazy. You go to a local meet and, like, there's so many people that can hit big weights, but a lot of times, if you go to a smaller local competition and just like snatch 130 and clean jerk 160, like people are really impressed, and they want to talk to you about weightlifting and learn what you're doing, and they're very positive. And and so even if you're yourself, that's not a huge weight to other people, it might be, and they view it the same way, and it's kind of refreshing, you
Yeah,
know.
and it's not and, like, I found, like I've gone to, Murder of Crows by us in, Brooklyn has done some meets.
That's a cool meet. They set
Yeah.
up the in the background of uh the platform, they do the projector with the
Yeah.
scoreboard. It looks good.
Yeah, so, like, I've done that a couple times and, like, I don't know, there's something about exactly what you're saying is, like, just, like, sitting around talking weightlifting with people after, right? They're like, "Oh, how long you been in it?" And it's like, "I've been doing it this long, this was kinda my journey in it." And I've had people like, "Oh, I'm just starting." And it's like, "Oh, that's so cool. I'm so happy, like, I got to talk to you as you're just starting this because you're gonna have so much fun. This is gonna be great. You're gonna be addicted to it, but you're gonna love it."
Yeah, just don't let it become this unhealthy addiction, which, I mean, it can be, but, yeah, out of all the things that you can get into, weightlifting has become pretty expensive now. However, compared to a lot of other hobbies, or, things that you could have goals in, like if you're, I don't know, snowmobiling or horseback riding or dirt bike riding, I mean, that's way more expensive, so
Yeah.
it's not the worst thing that you can get into. It's healthy for you for the most part, as long as you don't take it too far. So anyways, man, yeah, I just wanted to catch up with you. I think that the way behind this stuff is cool. Where can people find that? And I know you have like a course for sale, so tell people about it.
Yeah, so it's at theweightbehindit.com. Our first course is just on like athlete introduction. So it's getting to know the athlete and finding like baselines of starting through development. There's 6 modules on it. Essentially, what they're trying to do is, this is our foundational course, and we're going to launch another 5 after it. That's going to kind of like lead us through, the foundation of developing an athlete, and then take us through the stages of like, here's where we're starting, and then here's where we want to go, and how this whole process should look. So they can find that the weight behind it. They can also follow us on Tri-State Barbell on Instagram, and they can follow me on socials at Daniel Dodd.
Cool. Well, yeah, thanks for jumping on, man. It was cool to get to know you a little better. I mean, I've known you from a distance a little bit, but we've never really sat down and talked too much. So definitely wanted to get you on here. So I appreciate you accepting the invite. For people out there, you can find me at Travis Cooper 77 kg. If you have folks that you would like to see on the podcast, let me know. Questions, topics, anything. I know we aren't doing as many episodes these days, but when we're able to get folks like Daniel on here, then we love to have these episodes and keep the podcast going. So, hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you next time.